Hi everyone, it's Rachel from the Shades of Orange. Today I want to do my May wrap up and talk about the 8 books that I read this month. I read a ton and I just want to tell you all about them. There's a lot of good recommendations, so I'll just get started. Now the first book I read is a new release I received from Met Galley, and that is Black Little Lies by Sharon Bolton, also known as S.J. Bolton. I did a full review on that, so I'm going to link that down below. But the short summary is that this is a book that takes place on the Falkland Islands. A young boy has just gone missing, and what's especially terrifying about this is that on the same island, 2 boys in the last couple of years have also gone missing and were never found. So we are left wondering whether the reason this boy's gone missing may or may not be connected to those previous boys. You know, it's a really fast-paced mystery, lots of twists and turns. The characters are really interesting. Not the most likable characters, but I personally don't mind that at all. Just a lot of fun, keeps you guessing, and just a really solid mystery if you're looking for a fun one to pick up. Now I also read 2 audiobooks this month, and they both happen to be memoirs. The first one was My Life in France by Julia Child. This is a story of her experiences living in France with her husband Paul. I previously knew very little about Julia Child's. I had watched the movie that came out a couple years back about Julie and Julia, but otherwise knew very little about Julia Child herself. But despite not knowing a lot, I really enjoyed this memoir. I think Julia Child's personality really shone through in the memoir, and I really just loved hearing about the food and the travel. I'm not really a foodie myself. I consider myself a wannabe foodie. I like reading about food, but I didn't honestly understand a lot of the references to the French dishes. If you're a food lover, I'm sure this is a must read. But even not having a food background, I still gave it a solid 4 stars. I thought it was a really enjoyable story. I loved reading about her life, and I really felt like you could tell how much her and Paul loved each other, and I just overall really enjoyed the experience. So highly recommend that one. The audiobook itself was great. The narrator was excellent. The other memoir I listened to was Unbearable Lightness, A Story of Loss and Gain by Portia de Rossi. Portia, of course, is the actress who is on Arrested Development as well as Ally McBeal, and was also married, or is married, to Ellen DeGeneres. So I knew a little bit about her, but honestly not too much. I don't normally read or listen to celebrity memoirs. They're just not normally my thing, but I was particularly interested in the subject matter. This is a story that tells her experiences struggling with an eating disorder. As well, it also gets into her personal struggle coming to terms with being a lesbian. Now I have to say, huge trigger warnings on this book. If you're someone who struggles with an eating disorder, or is even prone to crash dieting, or is very self-conscious about your weight, this may not be a book to pick up. I found it at times very difficult to read, or in my case listen to, Portia sharing her inner thoughts at the time when she was in the midst of her eating disorder. Because she's constantly calling herself fat, she's talking about losing weight and calories, and at times it was very negative and difficult to listen to. Still a fascinating story. If you're someone who is curious to learn more about what it's like to struggle with an eating disorder, I think it's a very good memoir to pick up. But if you're prone to those issues yourself, I'd probably steer clear of this one, because there's a lot of negative messages that are getting put into this book. Of course, she's telling it in a positive way in order to say how she overcame her eating disorder, but the experience itself that she's describing is very difficult to read. I also participated in the middle grade May read-along this month. I wasn't as active on social media as I would have liked, but I still managed to read 3 books, and I was really excited about that. I rarely read middle grade. It's not a genre I really reach for now that I'm an adult. But it is fun every once in a while to go back and read those great children's books that either I didn't read as a child or wanted to reread. Now the first middle grade book I read was The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I've had this book on my TBR forever, so I'm really happy I finally got to it. If you don't know, it's a book about a girl who gets orphaned, goes to live with her uncle, meets some friends, and discovers this beautiful secret garden and works to bring it back to life. Overall, it's a really nice story. I'm happy I read it. I felt at times it was a little bit preachy. It talked a lot about the importance of fresh air and having a good appetite, and it just came across as a little bit of a preachy story all about, you know, the morals that a parent wants to write in a book meant for kids. But still a really good story. I personally prefer A Little Princess, but that's just my opinion. After that, I read a graphic novel intended for middle grade, and that is Amulet by Kibuishi, if I'm saying that right, and this is a story about a a family who goes to live in an old family house, and magical things start to happen from there. I think this is a great memoir to give to a young reader. The illustrations were beautiful and the story itself was actually really fun. It reminded me of kind of a Disney story or maybe an anime movie. It was just, you know, very sweet, magical, and a lot of fun. I'm not sure if I'll continue on because I did feel a little bit old reading it as an adult. I just didn't connect with it a lot, but I can definitely tell it's a quality story. So, you know, definitely one to pick up if you've been thinking about it. Now, the final middle grade book I read this month was Wonder by R.J. Palacio, and I love this one. So many people told me I would enjoy it, and they were absolutely right. This is a book about a boy named August who has facial deformities and is going to school for the first time in 5th grade. It's this beautiful story about acceptance and bullying, and I just think it was phenomenal. It's truly the kind of story that you don't need to be a middle grader to enjoy. I don't read a lot of middle grade fiction, and this book didn't feel like I was reading a book that was too young for me. It was quality writing, it was very insightful and interesting, it was funny and emotional. Overall, just really love this one. Gave it 4.5 stars on Goodreads. My only tiny complaint, and it's very small, is that I felt like at times they solved issues with bullies, with violence, and as an adult, I'm not sure if I really want to give that message to kids, saying that, you know, if someone is bullying you, you can resort to violence. I don't know if it was intended to come across that way, but that's how I read it as an adult. But despite that, the story itself is wonderful. Regardless of your age, I would recommend this book to so many people. I think it's well worth picking up and really enjoyable. I also read the book from my book club, and this time it was my pick, and I chose The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. This is a book told from the perspective of a dog. His owner is a race car driver, and this is a highly intelligent dog who is a huge fan of racing. He's very philosophical, and it's his story as well as the story of his owner, who goes through some really difficult, emotional, tense family situations. I don't want to spoil anything by getting into it, but it's definitely a heart-wrenching book at times. I picked this one for my book club because A, I love dogs, and B, I'm a huge fan of racing, particularly Formula One, so I really enjoyed all the references to racing. If you're not a fan of racing, I don't know if this story would be quite as enjoyable, but I thought it was a lot of fun. It took me a little while to get into, but once the story, kind of the main story with the owner, took off, I found it really fast-paced and really was kind of hooked and wanted to know what was happening. I gave this one 3.5 stars on Goodreads. It wasn't the most earth-shattering, mind-bending story I've ever read, but still a good, solid book, and if you're thinking about picking it up, it's definitely worth a read. Now, last book I've been reading for over a month now, and I'm happy to be done, and that is A Dance with Dragons by George R. R. Martin. This is definitely a chunker, and I'm excited now that I'm finished it. I can go online and read spoilers to my heart's content and read up on all the theories on how things will wrap up in the series. But without saying anything spoilery in this video, I'll let you know that a lot of my favorite characters were featured in this book, and I really enjoyed it. It was probably my third favorite of the 5 published books. The first being A Storm of Swords, followed by Game of Thrones, and then this book. Just really enjoyable. If you were like me and found the 4th book to be a bit of a drag, definitely don't let that turn you off in the series. This one was an awesome comeback. This one was so much better than the 4th book in my opinion, and I just, you know, inhaled it. Considering the length, I read this incredibly quickly and thoroughly enjoyed it. So those are all the books I read in May. Let me know your thoughts down below. Tell me what were your favorite reads of May, and otherwise have a good one.